I should have known the moment he smiled at my daughter on their wedding day that something wasn't right. But grief has a way of blinding you to things you would have seen clearly in another life. My husband had been dead less than a year when Sarah brought Derek home for the first time, and I was so desperate to see her happy again, to see anyone happy again, that I ignored every instinct screaming at me to look closer at the man holding her hand. If you're watching this from somewhere in the world right now, leave a comment and tell me where you are. I want to know I'm not alone in this. And if you've ever trusted someone who turned out to be a wolf in sheep's clothing, you'll understand every word of what I'm about to tell you. Make sure to check the description box below for more stories like this. Stories about betrayal, survival, and the kind of revenge that restores your soul. My name is Eleanor. I'm 63 years old, and I live in a small town outside Portland, Oregon, in the house my husband built with his own hands over 30 years ago. We raised Sarah here. We buried our son here. Well, his ashes are scattered in the garden. After he died in a car accident when he was only 19. My husband, Tom, followed him 6 years later. Heart attack. The doctor said it was sudden, but I knew better. Tom died of a broken heart. He just couldn't live in a world without our boy. So it was just me and Sarah. My beautiful, trusting, tender-hearted daughter who worked as a pediatric nurse and still cried during dog food commercials. She met Derek at a hospital charity event. He was a pharmaceutical sales rep, charming, well-dressed, confident in that easy way that makes you think someone has their life together. He said all the right things. He opened doors. He remembered birthdays. He called me Mom within 3 months of dating Sarah, and God help me, I let him. They got married in our backyard under the oak tree Tom planted the year Sarah was born. I paid for most of it. Tom's life insurance had left me comfortable, not wealthy, but secure. I owned the house outright. I had investments. I had savings. And I had the safe. Tom installed it himself in the basement, behind a false panel in the wall of his old workshop. He was paranoid about banks after the 2008 crash. So we kept cash in there, emergency funds, about $40,000. We also kept our important documents, birth certificates, the deed to the house, Sarah's grandmother's jewelry, some gold coins Tom had collected over the years. And we kept something else. Something no one knew about except me. After Tom died, I moved some things around. I added to the safe. I made preparations, the way any widow does when she realizes she's alone in the world and vulnerability is no longer a luxury she can afford. I changed the combination. I told no one, not even Sarah, where the safe was or how to open it. That safe was my insurance policy. My last line of defense. Derek moved into Sarah's apartment after the wedding, but he was at my house constantly. He'd drop by unannounced, always with some excuse. He was in the neighborhood, he wanted to check on me, he thought I might need help with something. At first, I found it sweet. Then I found it strange. He'd wander through rooms like he was taking inventory. He'd ask questions about Tom's tools, about the house's value, about my finances in ways that felt just a shade too curious. "Mom, you really should think about downsizing," he said one afternoon while I was making coffee. "This place is too big for one person. You could sell it, move into a nice condo, and have a lot of cash freed up." I smiled and handed him his cup. "I'm not ready to leave this house, Derek. It has too many memories." "Memories don't pay property taxes," he said, laughing like it was a joke. But his eyes weren't laughing. I started noticing small things. A drawer left slightly open when I knew I'd closed it. Papers on Tom's old desk shuffled out of order. The door to the basement ajar when I always kept it locked. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself grief was making me suspicious. But deep down, in that part of your gut that knows the truth before your brain catches up, I knew. Derek was looking for something. I didn't confront him. I didn't tell Sarah. Instead, I did what any smart woman does when she suspects a predator is circling. I set a trap. I started leaving breadcrumbs. I mentioned, casually over Sunday dinner, that I kept some of Tom's old paperwork in the basement. I sighed about how I really should organize it all someday but couldn't bring myself to go through his things. I watched Derek's face. I saw the flicker of interest. The way he leaned forward just slightly. The way he asked, too casually, What kind of paperwork? Oh, you know, I said, waving my hand. Financial stuff. Insurance documents. Things I'll need eventually. He nodded. He smiled. And I knew. 2 weeks later, I installed a small security camera in the basement. It was hidden in an old radio on the shelf. The kind of thing Derek would never notice because men like him don't see value in the things they consider junk. The camera fed to my phone. I could watch the basement anytime, from anywhere. And then I waited. If you've ever set a trap for someone you thought you loved, or someone your child loved, you know how it feels. That sick weight in your stomach. That hope that you're wrong, mixed with the cold certainty that you're right. I wanted to be wrong. God, I wanted to be wrong. But I knew I wasn't. It took 3 weeks. 3 weeks of Sunday dinners where Derek smiled at me across the table. 3 weeks of him kissing Sarah goodbye at my front door. 3 weeks of me pretending I didn't know what he was planning. And then one Tuesday afternoon, when Sarah was working a double shift at the hospital, my phone buzzed with a motion alert from the basement camera. Derek was in my house. And he was heading toward the workshop. I was at the grocery store when the alert came through. My hands were full of produce, tomatoes I think, or maybe peppers, and I nearly dropped everything when my phone vibrated in my pocket. I pulled it out, saw the notification, and felt my blood turn to ice. I abandoned my cart right there in the middle of the aisle. I didn't care who saw me. I didn't care about anything except getting home. The drive back felt like it took hours even though it was only 12 minutes. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. My hands shook on the steering wheel. Part of me wanted to call the police. Part of me wanted to call Sarah. But another part of me, the part that had been waiting for this moment, preparing for it, knew I had to see it for myself first. I parked down the street, not in my driveway. I didn't want him to know I was there. I opened the camera app on my phone with trembling fingers, and there he was, Derek in the basement, standing in front of Tom's old workbench. He'd already moved the false panel. He was staring at the safe. For a moment, he just stood there, and I wondered if he'd give up. If maybe, just maybe, there was still a chance he'd walk away and I could pretend this never happened. But then he pulled something out of his pocket. A piece of paper. He held it up to the safe's keypad, and I realized with a jolt of rage and disbelief that he had the combination. How? How did he get it? And then I remembered. 6 months ago, Sarah had asked me for my banking information because she wanted to add me to her health insurance beneficiary forms. I'd written down several numbers for her, account numbers, policy numbers. And I'd been careless. I'd left my notebook open on the kitchen counter, the one where I'd written the new safe combination after Tom died, reminding myself until I'd memorized it. Derek must have seen it. Photographed it, maybe. Or just memorized it himself. I watched him enter the code. I watched the safe door swing open. And I watched his face change. He went pale. Completely, utterly pale. His mouth fell open. He took a step back like he'd been shoved. And then, and this is the part I'll never forget, he made a sound. A choked, horrified sound, somewhere between a gasp and a retch. He'd found what I left for him. Let me back up and tell you what was in that safe, because this is where everything I'd been planning for weeks came together. And if you've stayed with me this far, hit that subscribe button, because what happened next changed everything, and you're going to want to see how this story ends. Check the description box below for more stories about revenge, justice, and the things people do when they're pushed too far. After I realized Derek was searching my house, after I understood what kind of man he really was, I made a decision. I wasn't going to wait for him to steal from me. I wasn't going to be a victim. I was going to teach him a lesson he'd never forget. So I started preparing. I took everything valuable out of the safe. The cash, the jewelry, the documents. I moved it all to a safety deposit box at my bank. And then I filled the safe with something else. I filled it with evidence. Photos, first. Dozens of them. Printed in full color, 8x10 glossy prints. Photos of Derek with another woman. A redhead named Stephanie who worked in his office. I'd hired a private investigator 5 weeks earlier. A woman named Ruth who came highly recommended and charged a fortune, but was worth every penny. Ruth had followed Derek for 3 weeks and documented everything. The lunch dates. The hotel visits. The way he touched Stephanie's face in the parking lot outside a restaurant while my daughter was at home cooking dinner. But the photos were just the beginning. I also included bank statements. Derek had been skimming money from Sarah's account. Small amounts at first, 100 here, 200 there, transferred to a separate account she didn't know about. Ruth had helped me get copies of everything. Forged signatures. Unauthorized withdrawals. A paper trail that would hold up in court. And then there were the documents. Printouts of text messages between Derek and Stephanie. Messages where he called Sarah naive and useful. Messages where he talked about waiting for the old lady to die so he and Sarah could inherit the house. Messages where he laughed about how easy it was to manipulate both of us. I put all of it in the safe. Every piece of evidence, carefully organized in a folder with a note on top that said, "I know what you are. And now you know that I know." But I didn't stop there. Because I wanted him to feel the full weight of what he'd done. I wanted him to understand that he hadn't just betrayed Sarah, he'd betrayed himself. At the bottom of the safe, underneath all the evidence, I placed one more thing. A letter. Written in my own hand, addressed to Derek, explaining exactly what I thought of him. Explaining what I was going to do next. Explaining that he had 2 choices. He could leave Sarah quietly, walk away and never contact us again, or I could show her everything. I could destroy him. The letter ended with a single line, "You should have picked a different family to prey on." Watching him read that letter on my phone screen, watching his hands shake as he flipped through the photos, watching the realization dawn on his face that he'd been caught, it was the most satisfying moment of my life. And the most terrifying. Because I didn't know what he'd do next. He stood there for a long time frozen. Then he started pacing. Then he pulled out his phone. Probably thinking about calling Sarah, or maybe Stephanie, or maybe just trying to figure out how to talk his way out of this. But there was no talking his way out. I'd made sure of that. I sat in my car, watching him fall apart on my phone screen, and I felt something I hadn't felt since Tom died. I felt powerful. And I knew right then that this was only the beginning. Derek left my house 20 minutes later, moving like a man in a trance. I watched him lock the basement door behind him. Like that mattered now, and stumble out to his car. His face was gray. His hands were still shaking. He sat in the driver's seat for almost 5 minutes before he finally started the engine and drove away. I waited another 10 minutes, just to be sure he wasn't coming back, before I went inside. My legs felt weak as I walked through my own front door. I'd been running on adrenaline for hours, and now that the confrontation, or the almost confrontation, was over, I felt myself starting to crash. I went down to the basement. The safe was still open. The folder was gone. He'd taken it. Good. That meant he'd read everything. That meant he knew. I locked the safe, replaced the false panel, and went upstairs to pour myself a drink. My hands were steadier now, but my mind was racing. What would Derek do? Would he come clean to Sarah? Would he disappear? Would he try to fight back, somehow turn this around on me? I didn't know. And that uncertainty gnawed at me. I didn't have to wait long to find out. Sarah called me that evening, just after 8. Her voice was tight, controlled, the voice she used when she was trying very hard not to cry. "Mom," she said. "Can I come over?" "Of course, honey. Are you okay?" There was a long pause. "No." She arrived 30 minutes later. Her eyes were red, her face blotchy. She'd been crying hard. She walked past me into the living room and collapsed on the couch, and I knew that Derek had told her something. But what? "He left," Sarah said, her voice breaking. "Derek left. He said he couldn't do this anymore. That he made a mistake marrying me. That he needs to figure out his life." She looked up at me with devastated, bewildered eyes. "Mom, I don't understand. We were fine. We were happy. What did I do wrong?" My heart broke for her. Even though I'd orchestrated this, even though I'd wanted Derek gone, seeing my daughter's pain was almost unbearable. I sat down next to her and pulled her into my arms. "You didn't do anything wrong, sweetheart. Nothing. This is about him, not you. But why? She sobbed. Why would he just leave like this? I held her while she cried, and I made a decision. I could tell her the truth right now, show her the evidence, explain what Derek had been doing, let her see him for what he really was. Or I could wait. Let her grieve the fantasy of who she thought he was before I shattered it completely with reality. I chose to wait. Not because I wanted to protect Derek, I wanted him buried, but because I wanted to protect Sarah. She'd been through so much already. Our son's death. Tom's death. And now this. I needed to time this right. I needed her to be ready to hear it. He'll come back, I lied, stroking her hair. Maybe he just needs some space. Some time to think. But Derek didn't come back. Days passed, then weeks. He'd moved out of Sarah's apartment, taken his things while she was at work. He stopped answering her calls. Stopped responding to her texts. Just vanished. Sarah was a wreck. She couldn't eat. She couldn't sleep. She took time off work. And every day, I watched her suffer, and I wondered if I'd made the right choice. If you've ever had to watch someone you love go through hell while you held the key to their understanding, you know how it feels. It's torture. You want to fix it. You want to make the pain stop. But sometimes, the truth has to wait for the right moment. Sometimes, people need to be ready to receive it. And if you've been through something similar, let me know in the comments. Share your story. And check the description below for more stories like this one. Then, 6 weeks after Derek left, something happened that changed everything. Sarah came to my house on a Sunday afternoon. She looked different. Not better, exactly, but stronger. Like something had shifted inside her. She sat down at my kitchen table and said, "Mom, I need to tell you something." I braced myself. Okay. I've been going through Derek's things. The stuff he left behind. Papers, mostly. Documents I didn't even know existed. She pulled out a folder. Not the one I'd left in the safe, but something else. He had another bank account. A secret one. And he's been taking money from me for months. Thousands of dollars. I didn't have to fake my shock. I hadn't known she'd found this on her own. Sarah. There's more. Her voice was steady now, cold. I hired someone to look into him. A private investigator. And she found out he was having an affair. With a woman from his office. The whole time we were married. I stared at her. You hired an investigator? She nodded. I know it sounds crazy. But something about the way he left didn't make sense. It was too sudden. Too clean. Like he'd been planning it. So I started digging. She looked at me, and there was something fierce in her eyes, something I'd never seen before. I'm not going to let him get away with this, Mom. I'm going to make sure everyone knows what he did. I should have felt relief. I should have felt vindicated. But instead, I felt a cold twist of fear. Because I realized, in that moment, that I'd underestimated my daughter. She wasn't just grieving. She was hunting. And she didn't know that I'd been hunting too. Sarah, I said carefully, what are you planning to do? She smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. I'm going to ruin him. Sweetheart, I don't think. I already filed for divorce, she said. And I'm taking him to court for fraud. For theft. For everything. My lawyer says I have a solid case. Especially with the evidence the investigator found. My mouth went dry. What evidence? She opened the folder and spread photos across the table. The same photos I'd put in the safe. Photos of Derek and Stephanie. Bank statements. Text messages. All of it. Where did you get these? I asked, though I already knew. Sarah looked at me for a long moment. And then she said, very quietly, from Derek's car. The investigator broke into it last week while he was at work. Found a folder with all of this inside. He must have been keeping it. I don't know why. Maybe as insurance? Maybe he thought he'd need it someday. No. He kept it because I gave it to him. Because he took it from my safe. And now Sarah had it. And she thought she'd discovered it herself. I should have told her the truth then. I should have explained what I'd done, how I'd set this all up. But I didn't. Because I realized something, it was better this way. Better for Sarah to think she'd uncovered Derek's betrayal on her own. Better for her to feel like she'd taken control, like she'd fought back. If I told her what I'd done, it would take that power away from her. It would make her a pawn in my game instead of the hero of her own story. So I kept my mouth shut. And I watched my daughter become someone I barely recognized. Someone harder, sharper, more ruthless than I'd ever imagined she could be. The divorce was brutal. Sarah didn't just want out of the marriage. She wanted blood. And she got it. Her lawyer tore Derek apart in depositions. Every lie, every stolen dollar, every betrayal was laid out in excruciating detail. The affair with Stephanie came out publicly. Derek's company launched an internal investigation. He was fired within a month. Sarah won everything. The judge ordered Derek to pay back every cent he'd stolen, plus damages. Plus her legal fees. The man who'd smiled at my dinner table and called me Mom was left with nothing. No job. No reputation. No future. I should have felt satisfied. I should have felt like justice had been served. But instead, I felt hollow. Because watching Sarah go through this, watching her harden into someone I didn't quite recognize, made me realize the cost of revenge. It wasn't just Derek who'd been destroyed. Sarah had been changed too. She won the case, but she lost something in the process. Some lightness. Some trust in the world. We were sitting in my kitchen a few months after the divorce was finalized. Sarah was drinking tea, staring out the window at the garden where we'd scattered her brother's ashes. She looked exhausted. Older than her 34 years. "Mom," she said quietly, "can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Did you know?" She turned to look at me. "About Derek. About what he was doing. Did you know before he left?" My heart stopped. I'd been dreading this question for months. I'd prepared answers, rehearsed lies. But sitting there, looking at my daughter's tired, searching eyes, I couldn't do it. I couldn't lie to her anymore. "Yes," I said. She didn't look surprised. Just sad. "How long?" "A few months. I hired an investigator. I found out about the affair, about the money. I put evidence in the safe because I knew he was looking for it. I wanted him to find it. I wanted him to know he'd been caught." I paused. "I was trying to protect you." Sarah nodded slowly. "The folder Derek had. The one my investigator found in his car. That was yours, wasn't it?" "Yes." "And you let me think I'd discovered it myself." "I thought it was better that way. I thought you needed to feel like you'd fought back. Like you'd won on your own terms." Sarah was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "You should have told me." "I know. I had a right to know. From the beginning." "You did. And I'm sorry. I thought I was doing the right thing, but I was wrong. I took your agency away from you. I made decisions for you instead of with you. And I'm sorry." She looked at me with tears in her eyes. "I'm so angry at you, Mom." "I know. But I also—" She trailed off, wiping her face. "I also understand why you did it. You were trying to protect me. You always do. Even when it hurts." I reached across the table and took her hand. "I love you, Sarah. More than anything in this world. And if I could go back and do it differently, I would. I'd tell you everything from the start. I'd let you decide what to do. But I can't change the past. All I can do is promise to be honest with you from now on." She squeezed my hand. "Okay. Okay. Okay." She smiled, just a little. "We'll figure it out. Together." And we did. It took time. It took therapy, for both of us. It took hard conversations and hurt feelings and moments where I thought I'd broken something between us that could never be repaired. But slowly, carefully, we rebuilt. Sarah started dating again, eventually. A kind man named Peter who worked as a teacher and had no interest in my money or my house. They took things slow. They built something real. And watching her smile at him, watching her trust again, was worth more than any revenge I could have imagined. As for Derek, I heard through the grapevine that he moved to California. Tried to start over. I don't know if he succeeded. I don't care. He's not part of our lives anymore. He's barely even a memory. But the safe is. I kept it, down in the basement behind the false panel. It's empty now. I moved everything valuable to the bank years ago. But I couldn't bring myself to get rid of it. Because it reminds me of something important. It reminds me that sometimes, the things we do to protect the people we love have consequences we can't predict. That revenge, even justified revenge, comes with a cost. That the line between protector and manipulator is thinner than we think. I'm 63 years old. I've buried a son and a husband. I've watched my daughter's heart break and heal. And I've learned that life is more complicated than the stories we tell ourselves about good guys and bad guys, heroes and villains. Derek was a predator. There's no question about that. He deserved everything he got. But I wasn't innocent either. I manipulated. I schemed. I kept secrets. And I hurt my daughter in the process of trying to save her. If I could go back, would I do it again? I don't know. Maybe. Probably. Because despite everything, Sarah is safe now. She's happy. She's free. And maybe that's all that matters. Or maybe that's just another story I tell myself to sleep at night. If you've made it this far, thank you for listening. Thank you for letting me tell this story, for letting me work through it out loud. If you've ever been in a situation where you had to choose between honesty and protection, between revenge and peace, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. And please, check the description box below for more stories like this. Stories about family, betrayal, survival, and the messy, complicated ways we love each other. Because at the end of the day, that's what this is all about. Love. The fierce, flawed, imperfect kind that makes us do terrible things for good reasons. The kind that breaks us and rebuilds us. The kind that leaves scars but also leaves us stronger. The kind that's worth fighting for, even when the fight costs us more than we ever expected to pay.